Chapter 1. Awakening. In a bustling and noisy metropolis that never sleeps, the morning light tries to pass through the narrow gaps between the tall buildings and falls into a slightly cramped apartment. Emily suddenly woke up from a chaotic dream full of strange fragments. Cold sweat soaked her pajamas and her heart beat violently in her chest. This dream has been haunting her for many years. There is always a boy in the dream. That smile and that voice are so familiar that it makes her heart ache, but every time she tries to see his face clearly, the dream will break. Emily found that she was different from others since she was a child. She has an amazing ability to remember everything she sees, and some scenes that do not belong to this era often appear in her mind. Ancient and solemn manners, retro balls attended by people in gorgeous costumes, and even cruel battlefields filled with war and smoke. These pictures beyond the cognition of ordinary people make her confused and scared. She can only bury these secrets deep in her heart, for fear of being regarded as a freak and suffering strange eyes. Time flies and Emily is 18 years old. On a lazy weekend afternoon, she was bored and sorting out her family's old things, trying to find some clues about her life from these old objects. She opened a dusty old box, which exuded an old smell, as if it had sealed the secrets of countless years. At the bottom of the box, a yellowed diary lay quietly, and the paper was so fragile that it seemed that it would break with a slight touch. Emily picked up the diary curiously, and when she opened the first page and saw the handwriting on it, she was shocked and widened her eyes. The handwriting was exactly the same as the words she wrote on weekdays. The trend of each stroke and the habit of connecting the strokes seemed to be written by herself. Her heartbeat suddenly accelerated, and an indescribable uneasiness and expectation surged in her heart. With a nervous mood, Emily continued to read the diary. At first she thought it was just the story of one woman, but as she read deeper she gradually discovered that the diary seemed to record the lives of 18 women. These women live in different times with different identities and experiences. Some are noble ladies who enjoy a good life in luxurious castles, but are helpless in front of love. Some are nurses in wartime saving lives in the hail of bullets, and their hearts are full of desire for peace. Others are ordinary peasant women who work hard for life, but still stick to their inner kindness. Each of them will meet their own love in their own era. Some are encounters, some are persistent searches, some love is vigorous and some love is plain and happy. But no matter what kind of love, they have not reached the point of marriage, which makes people feel sorry. However, although their lives are very different, those experiences and emotions are perfectly matched with the pictures deep in Emily's memory. She remembers that she danced with her beloved in the ancient manner, and the feeling of happiness can still be clearly felt. She also remembers the cruelty of the war, watching the people around her fall one by one. The helplessness and pain often wake her up in her dreams, and the joys, sorrows, anger and joys of those ordinary days can all be found in the diary. Emily's hands began to tremble uncontrollably. She finally realized that she had memories of her past lives and had been reincarnated 19 times. This discovery shocked and confused her. She didn't know what it meant, nor what was waiting for her in the future. But a voice in her heart told her that from this moment on her life would change completely. Chapter 2. Verification and Surprise. Emily tightly grasped the diary that changed her cognition, and gradually came back to her senses from the shock of discovering the secret, with an eager desire to verify the authenticity of these memories of her past life. In this life, Emily is an outstanding student in the history department of a well-known university. Her love for history stems from those mysterious memories of her past life. Since then, the library has become her most frequented place. The quiet atmosphere and piles of books there make her feel closer and closer to the truth. Every morning, when the city has not yet fully awakened, Emily has already stepped into the door of the library. She shuttled between rows of bookshelves, eagerly scanning the labels of each book, from historical books to biographies, from local county chronicles to art albums. As long as there is any information that may be related to her past life memories, she will never let it go. She would sit in the ancient book reading room for a whole day, carefully turning over those yellowed and fragile pages, and carefully comparing every detail. When she encountered key information, she would carefully record it in the notebook she carried with her, and her handwriting trembled slightly because of excitement. Once she saw a description of an old manor in a book about the life of aristocrats in the 18th century. The layout of the manor, the architectural style, and even the exotic flowers and plants in the garden mentioned in the book were exactly the same as where she lived as a noble lady in her previous life. At that moment, her heartbeat accelerated rapidly, and her fingers gently stroked the words on the pages of the book, as if she had returned to that place full of memories. As she looked up the information in depth, more and more evidence verified the authenticity of the memories in the diary and her dreams. She found documents recording the war in her previous life, and the descriptions of the time, place, and cruelty of the battle in it were completely consistent with the flying flames and painful cries in her memory. She also found research materials on an art school of a certain period, and the creative style and painting characteristics of a painter mentioned in it were exactly what she was familiar with as an art lover in her previous life. On an afternoon when the sun shone through the stained glass and sprinkled on the ground, Emily was looking for information in the corner of the library as usual. She accidentally flipped through a portrait in an album introducing the upper class of the 19th century. When her eyes touched the boy in the portrait, she froze instantly. The boy in the painting had deep eyes as if hiding endless stories and a warm smile. He was the person who appeared repeatedly in her dreams, William. The note under the portrait showed that the boy's name was William Harper, and he lived in the upper class of the city in the 19th century. Emily's breathing became rapid, and her hand gently touched the portrait, as if she wanted to travel through time and space to establish a connection with the person in the painting. At this moment she knew that her bond with her previous life was much closer than she had imagined, and the clues about William might become the key to unlocking the mystery of her past and present lives. Chapter 3. First Meeting and Heartbeat. Emily sat in the library, staring at the information of Jack Harper on the computer screen, and her heart was tangled. Since she found William's portrait and learned that Jack was William's direct descendant and that the two looked very similar, a strong desire to explore was burning in her heart. She couldn't help but wonder if Jack was William's reincarnation in this life. Did he also carry some memories of his previous life like herself? After repeated consideration, Emily knew that it was too abrupt to ask rashly and she might be regarded as a weirdo. So she had an idea and decided to contact Jack in the name of an investigation and interview by the school news agency, and find a reasonable excuse for her presumptuous visit. In this way she might be able to get closer to Jack more naturally and explore the secrets in her heart. At the moment when she pressed the send email, Emily's hands trembled slightly, and an indescribable sense of tension quickly spread. Not long after, Jack replied to the email, agreed to the interview request, and made an appointment to meet at a cafe in downtown Manhattan. But when Emily sat in the cafe waiting for Jack to arrive, she was full of regrets. Regretting that she had been impulsive and had established contact with Jack in this way. Her fingers gently stroked the edge of the coffee cup, her eyes wandering, sometimes looking out the window, sometimes looking down at her toes. What am I doing? What if he finds out that I'm lying? What if he thinks I'm a freak and never talks to me again? Emily's heart kept pulling, and the entanglement and anxiety overwhelmed her like a tide. She began to imagine Jack's reaction after learning the truth. Would he question her angrily, or would he turn away with disdain? Just as Emily was immersed in her thoughts, the door of the cafe was pushed open. Jack's tall figure appeared at the door. He was wearing a neat suit with a bit of curiosity and doubt in his eyes, and was scanning the store looking for the person he had agreed to meet. The moment she saw Jack, all of Emily's regrets and uneasiness were thrown out of her mind, replaced by an irresistible sense of familiarity. His face was exactly the same as William in the portrait, and his eyebrows and smile seemed to be an indispensable part of her life, making her heart beat faster and her breathing quicken. Jack soon noticed Emily, and when their eyes met, Jack saw a trace of panic and nervousness in her eyes. And through Emily's eyes, Jack also had a strange feeling of déjà vu. He frowned slightly and thought to himself, it was obviously the first time they met. Why did this girl give him such a familiar feeling? With a heart full of doubts and curiosity, he walked steadily towards Emily, raised a polite smile naturally and said softly, "Hello, you are Emily? Nice to meet you." Seeing this, Emily quickly stood up and responded. Because of her inner nervousness, her voice trembled slightly unconsciously. "Hello, Jack. Thank you very much for taking the time to accept my interview." The two slowly sat down on the sofa. The moment their eyes met, an indescribable atmosphere quietly spread in the air. They both vaguely realized in their hearts that this meeting was very likely to become a key turning point in changing each other's destiny. In the subsequent conversation, Emily keenly noticed that Jack did not seem to have any memories of his previous life. Whenever she tried to mention topics related to William indirectly, Jack's response showed that he knew very little about it. Emily secretly warned herself not to act impulsively. She resisted the urge to ask about her past life memories and finally decided to treat this meeting as an ordinary communication, so as not to scare Jack with her recklessness and cause things to develop in an uncontrollable direction. After the first meeting, the two exchanged contact information and began to have more intersections. On a sunny weekend, Jack enthusiastically invited Emily to visit the Museum of Modern Art. Entering the museum, the breath of art hits you in the face, and all kinds of creative and tense paintings are hung on the walls of the exhibition hall. Emily shuttled between the works, her eyes flashing with excitement, as if she had opened a box of conversation, and enthusiastically shared her profound insights into art history. Look at this Monet's Impression Sunrise, which is the pioneering work of Impressionism. Monet used agile brushstrokes to show the changes of light and shadow vividly. The hazy fog in the harbor in the early morning and the sparkling sea seem to have life in his brush. The capture of the momentary impression is simply amazing, Emily said while gently tracing the lines in the painting with her fingers, her eyes full of intoxication. Jack followed her, listening attentively, nodding slightly from time to time, and switching his eyes between the painting and Emily. It's really amazing. I used to look at paintings and just thought they were beautiful. After listening to you, it seems that I really saw the harbor in the early morning. What about postmodernism? Where is their deconstruction and innovation reflected? Jack asked with interest. Emily turned around and faced an abstract painting with wisdom in her eyes and continued, "Postmodern works like this break the traditional rules of art. Look at this painting, there is no clear concrete image. It expresses a reinterpretation of the real world through the random combination of colors and shapes. It encourages people to break through conventional thinking and explore deeper spiritual connotations." The two walked and talked in the exhibition hall, discussing enthusiastically from the impressionist exploration of light and shadow to the bold innovation of postmodernism. Their views collided with each other, sometimes coincided and sometimes expressed their own opinions, but every exchange made each other have a deeper understanding of art and each other. Laughter and joy echoed in the exhibition hall, attracting many envious eyes from others. Another time, Jack had a sudden idea and took Emily to experience skydiving. Standing at the door of the aircraft cabin, the strong airflow whistled past and the feet were thousands of feet high. Emily was so nervous that her palms were full of sweat and her legs were slightly weak. Jack sensed her uneasiness, held her hand tightly, gave her strength and said gently and firmly, "Don't be afraid, I'm here." That warm and powerful hand was like a reassurance to Emily. With the coach's order, the two jumped into the blue sky together. The whistling wind was in her ears, and the earth was approaching rapidly under her feet. Emily's heartbeat accelerated sharply. She subconsciously looked at Jack beside her, only to see that he had a firm look and a confident smile on his face. In this thrilling moment, Emily's heart surged with unprecedented courage and excitement. She suddenly felt that as long as Jack was by her side, it seemed that no difficulties were insurmountable. In getting along again and again, Jack felt that Emily was different. Many times, as soon as he had an idea flash through his mind, Emily could understand it and say what he wanted to say in advance. The two often had the same views on various matters in life. Whether discussing the deep meaning of a movie or their insights on urban development, they could find resonance in each other's words. This deep connection in their souls made Jack firmly believe that Emily was his destined person, the soul mate he had been looking for. Chapter 4. Revealing the Secret. As time went by, Emily and Jack's feelings grew deeper and deeper, and their trust in each other grew day by day. On a quiet night, the moonlight was like water, pouring into Emily's room through the window, casting a soft halo on the room. The two sat on the sofa, and it was so quiet that they could only hear each other's breathing. Emily took a deep breath and broke the silence. She knew that it was time to tell Jack the secret that had been buried deep in her heart. "Jack, I have something that I have been hiding from you. I don't know what you will think when you hear it, but I think I must let you know." Emily's voice trembled slightly, and her eyes were full of uneasiness and expectation. Jack turned his head and looked at Emily. He felt uneasy but more curious. He gently held Emily's hand and gave her strength. "No matter what it is, you can tell me. I will always be by your side." Emily slowly stood up, carefully took out the yellowed diary from the drawer, and gently placed it in front of Jack. "This diary is the key to my discovery of my secret." Then she began to slowly tell her experience of reincarnation, from her photographic memory since childhood, to the scenes that did not belong to this era that often appeared in her mind, to the discovery of the diary at the age of 18, confirming that she had been reincarnated 19 times. Her voice was soft but firm and her eyes flashed with complex light, with feelings for the past and worries about the future. Jack's eyes widened at first and his face was full of doubt. He was a person who received scientific education since childhood. Such supernatural things were simply a fantasy in his previous cognition. He frowned slightly and subconsciously wanted to refute, but looking at Emily's sincere eyes, those questioning words were swallowed back by him. "Look, the handwriting here is exactly the same as mine." Emily opened the diary and pointed at the handwriting on it and said, "Moreover, the experiences and emotions of each life recorded in the diary are perfectly consistent with the pictures in my memory." Jack slowly took the diary and his fingers gently touched the yellowed paper. Every word on it seemed to carry the warmth of time. He began to read it carefully, looking at the stories about women of different times and identities, and his doubts gradually wavered. Those delicate emotional descriptions and those portrayals of life details did not seem to be made up. He seemed to be able to see Emily's life fragments in her previous life through the words and feel her joys, sorrows, anger, and happiness. When Jack read the part about William, his heartbeat suddenly accelerated. The familiar name and the familiar description made him feel a strong sense of intimacy in his heart. He couldn't help but think of the bits and pieces of his time with Emily, those tacit moments, those moments of telepathy. It turned out that everything was not accidental. He finally understood that he always felt that he was destined to be with Emily, and the root cause was their bond in their previous lives. Jack looked up at Emily, and the suspicion in his eyes was replaced by deep emotion and understanding. He held Emily's hand tightly and said, "I believe you. No matter what happened in the past, we will face it together in the future." Emily's eyes were full of tears and she nodded vigorously. The big stone in her heart finally fell to the ground. On this quiet night, their feelings became more indestructible because of the revelation of this secret. Since then, the relationship between the two has quickly heated up, and they have spent many wonderful times together. They would stroll on the streets late at night, share each other's dreams and troubles. They would also go to the small shop on the street to have breakfast together on weekend mornings, watching the bustling crowds on the city streets, and feeling the happiness in ordinary days. Chapter 5. Family in the Previous Life. As her relationship with Jack grew stronger, Emily's deep longing for her family in the previous life became stronger. Relying on the vague memories and address clues of her previous life, she traveled through the streets and alleys of the city, and searched in the old household registration files countless times, and finally found the descendant of her sister in the previous life, Lily. Lily has a cheerful personality and works in an art studio. Her smile and every move are the shadow of her sister in the past. Emily knew that a rash recognition might bring unpredictable consequences, so she suppressed her excitement and approached Lily as an art lover. They participated in various art exhibitions together and had heated discussions in front of each artwork. From the use of colors in the paintings to the emotional expression behind the creation, each exchange brought the two closer, and gradually, they became friends who talked about everything. Through frequent contact with Lily, Emily slowly learned about the current life of her sister in the previous life. Lily loves art. Although she will face some challenges in her career, she always faces them positively and optimistically. Emily felt a little relieved to know that her sister's descendants lived so vibrantly, as if she saw her sister's stubborn and strong appearance again. One day, Lily enthusiastically invited Emily to her home for dinner, and Emily readily agreed. The moment she stepped into Lily's house, the familiar layout and decoration made her instantly return to the time when she lived with her sister in her previous life. She suppressed the waves in her heart and walked around the room seemingly casually but with nostalgia, and every step seemed to be looking for memories of the past. On the dining table, there were all kinds of delicious food, and the laughter of Lily and her family echoed in the house. During the meal, Emily's inadvertent habitual action made her sister's eyes suddenly fixed. That was an action that her sister was very familiar with in her previous life. Emily often did this when they lived together. The sister's eyes were full of surprise and confusion. She stared at Emily as if she wanted to find more familiar shadows from her. Emily noticed her sister's strangeness and her heart tightened. She knew she had to leave as soon as possible. So she hurriedly found an excuse with a little panic on her face and got up to say goodbye. After leaving Lily's house, Emily felt heavy and complicated. It's not that she didn't want to recognize her sister, but from the clues in the diary and those unspeakable premonitions, she learned that if she recognized her family in the previous life, it might change their original fate, and this change is often accompanied by a bad ending. The night wind was a little chilly and Emily walked alone on the street. Tears couldn't help but burst out. At this time Jack received her call and hurried over. Seeing Emily's sad look, he hugged her in his arms distressfully. Jack hugged Emily tightly, patted her back gently and comforted her gently. "Don't be sad, everything will be fine." Emily leaned in Jack's arms, feeling his warmth, and the pain in her heart seemed to be relieved a lot. Strangely, the sister did not chase out to ask the reason, nor did she find Emily through Lily. Perhaps the sister also felt the subtlety of this fate and chose to remain silent. Or perhaps there was really a wonderful telepathy between the sister and Emily, and she understood her difficulties in the dark. After that, Emily and Lily continued to get along as friends as usual, but Emily's heart always hid the deep attachment to her family in the previous life. Chapter 6. The Secret of the Curse. While enjoying the sweet love with Jack and maintaining the warm friendship with Lily, Emily's exploration of the memory of her past life has become more and more in-depth. In a silent night, the hustle and bustle of the city has long been silent. Emily sat alone under the dim desk lamp, and the diary carrying the secrets of her past life was opened again. Her fingers gently brushed across the yellowed pages, her eyes focused and eager, as if she wanted to dig out the truth buried by the years from the lines. Previously, although Emily had learned the secret of her reincarnation from the diary, there was always a feeling lingering in her heart that she felt that there were still some key clues that had not been discovered. Why did she persist in looking for William in this life after awakening in each life? And why did there be no good ending since the first love with William? As her fingertips slowly slid, lines of obscure records that she had ignored came into her eyes, and an amazing secret was gradually unveiled. It turns out that every love between her and William ended in tragedy, and behind it was a complicated and long-standing grievance between the two families. Looking back in the past in a long-ago era, the two families occupied an important position in the business field and competed fiercely with each other. In order to gain greater advantages in the business competition, the two families had their own thoughts and promoted the marriage of a young couple. At first, this union was purely out of consideration for the interests of their respective families. Although the two became a couple, they were just pawns in the family game. However, the wonder of fate lies in its unpredictability. In the day-to-day interactions, the couple who were originally united by interests, unknowingly fell in love, and the seeds of love quietly sprouted and grew vigorously. Their love not only made each other's lives splendid, but also unexpectedly became an opportunity for the two families to move towards glory. With the joint efforts of the two, the family business was booming and wealth and status reached unprecedented heights. But the good times did not last long and the gears of fate did not stop turning. As the family's power expanded, various temptations came one after another. The man gradually lost himself in the face of complicated family affairs and external temptations, and ultimately failed to stick to his love with his wife. He cruelly abandoned his wife, and the originally happy family was instantly shattered. The wife who lost her love and family fell into endless pain, and the woman's family also retreated in the subsequent business competition due to this incident and gradually declined. The elders of the woman's family were unwilling to accept it. They attributed the decline of the family to this failed marriage and the betrayal of the man's family. In order to get revenge, they searched everywhere and finally found a wizard who was famous at the time and proficient in mysterious magic. After receiving a high reward, the wizard cast a vicious curse, so that anyone between the two families once in love would suffer bad luck and would not have a good end. This curse is like an invisible shackle. Since then, it has imprisoned the love of the young people of the two families for generations, and has also become the root cause of Emily and William's love tragedy in every life. This curse is like an invisible chain, binding her and William in every reincarnation. Whether it was the smoke of war that separated them, the shadow of disease that took the life of their lover, or the strong opposition of the family that forced them to separate, the curse was behind all this. Emily's hands trembled slightly and she couldn't believe what she saw. She knew that the discovery of this curse was not only a revelation of past pain, but also a huge threat to future happiness. The next day, Emily found Jack anxiously and told him the secret. Jack was so shocked that he couldn't speak. He held Emily's hand tightly and tried to give her strength. The eyes of the two were full of worry but more of determination. They decided to find a way to lift the curse together and break the shackles of fate. They first visited the most prestigious occult expert in the city. The expert's study was filled with an old atmosphere, and the surrounding bookshelves were filled with various ancient books and mysterious scrolls. After listening to their story, the expert's face became solemn. He slowly opened a heavy ancient book, pointed to the obscure text on it and said that the curse was very powerful and was imposed by an evil force. It would not be easy to remove it. After leaving the expert's residence, Emily and Jack did not give up. They went to the university again and found a historian who studied ancient culture and mysticism. The historian was moved by their persistence and decided to help them find clues in the piles of ancient books. In the dim archives, Emily and Jack flipped through the yellowed books page by page, not missing any information that might be related to the curse. Every time they found a seemingly useful clue, they would discuss it excitedly as if they saw a glimmer of hope. However, as the investigation deepened, they found that the secret behind the curse was hidden very deeply, and it seemed that there was a mysterious force secretly obstructing their actions. But Emily and Jack encouraged each other. They firmly believed that as long as they worked together, they would be able to find a way to remove the curse and usher in their own happiness. Chapter 7: Adventure in the Old House. In order to break the curse, Emily and Jack decided to go to the old house of the Harper family, the place that carried the grievances and curse secrets of the two families. The night before departure, Emily tossed and turned in bed. She knew that this journey was full of unknowns and dangers, but in order to have a future with Jack, she had no intention of retreating. Jack was also worried. He held Emily's hand tightly as if this would give her strength and courage. The next morning, when the first ray of sunlight shone on the earth, they set off on their journey. The car slowly drove to the suburbs, away from the hustle and bustle of the city, and the surrounding scenery gradually became desolate. When the outline of the old house appeared in the field of vision, a gloomy breath came over. This old house has been abandoned for many years. The outer wall is covered with moss, the windows are broken and the door is half closed, shaking gently in the breeze, making a creaking sound. They walked into the old house carefully, and the house was filled with an old and musty smell. The surroundings were dimly lit, with only a few rays of sunlight shining through the broken roof and window gaps, forming beams of light, with countless dust flying in the beams of light. Their footsteps echoed in the empty room, and every step seemed to awaken memories that had been dormant for many years. In the living room of the old house, they found a wall engraved with strange symbols. Emily relied on her understanding of ancient characters in her previous life to get closer and carefully interpret them. These symbols record the disputes between the two families and the origin of the curse. Jack helped to find the corresponding items, searching everywhere, not leaving any corner. Suddenly, a mouse jumped out from the corner and Emily screamed in fright. Jack immediately protected her behind him and comforted her, his eyes full of concern. Then they came to the study on the second floor. The bookshelves in the study collapsed and the books were scattered all over the floor. When they were looking for clues in the pile of books, Jack accidentally got hit on the foot by a heavy book. He frowned in pain, but seeing Emily's worried eyes, he still endured the pain and smiled and said it was okay. In an old diary they found a key clue, which recorded a legend about the basement of the old house, and perhaps there was the key to lifting the curse. When they came to the entrance of the basement, a chill hit them. There was a damp smell in the basement and countless unknown dangers seemed to be hidden in the darkness. They walked down the stairs carefully, testing every step for fear of triggering some mechanism. There were some shabby furniture and sundries in the basement, and several shabby oil lamps were hung on the walls around, emitting a faint light. In the corner of the basement they found a huge box with mysterious patterns engraved on it. After some effort they finally opened the box, which contained an ancient book with a simple and heavy appearance and strange symbols engraved on the cover. Emily opened the ancient book with trembling hands, and saw the method of removing the curse recorded on it. It is necessary to use the tokens of the two families as a medium at a specific time and place, with the purest love between the two people, to resolve the hatred and curse that has lasted for 100 years. Seeing this method, Emily and Jack looked at each other, with both the joy of finding hope and the uneasiness of the unknown future. Chapter 8. Finally breaking the curse. Emily and Jack carried the ancient book found in the basement of the old house. The method of removing the curse on it was like a ray of dawn, but it was also accompanied by many problems. The first task was to find the tokens of the two families, but this was easier said than done. They plunged into the vast family information and read it day and night. The library and the family archives left their busy figures, and the yellowed ancient books and old letters were opened one by one, and every possible clue was not missed. Finally, in a family chronicle that had been sealed for many years, they found a detailed record of the token. Emily's family's token was an exquisite emerald brooch, which was said to have been worn at a key family gathering, carrying the expectations of the family's ancestors, while Jack's family's token was a golden seal that symbolized the inheritance of power, which circulated in the hands of the family's successive rulers. When they set out to take the token, they were strongly obstructed by some people in the family. In Jack's family, the golden seal is of extraordinary significance. It is not only a symbol of family power, but also an important symbol of maintaining family order. When Jack's uncle learned that he was going to borrow the seal to lift the curse, his face instantly became gloomy. "Jack, do you know what this seal means? How can you take away the core of the family for an illusory curse?" The uncle's voice was full of majesty and anger. Jack took a deep breath and said sincerely, "Uncle, I know the importance of the seal. But Emily and I have gone through too many hardships in our love, and this curse is like a shadow hanging over us. I don't care about the power struggle in the family. I just want to live a peaceful and happy life with her. I promise you that I will return it immediately after I use it." Jack's eyes were firm and sincere, full of persistence in love and desire for future life. Uncle's eyes stayed on Jack's face for a long time, and his heart was entangled between family power and his nephew's happiness. In the end, the love between Jack and Emily across time and space moved him. Uncle sighed slowly, took out the golden seal from the safe, handed it to Jack and said, "I hope you can succeed, kid." The process of finding Emily's family keepsake was also full of twists and turns. Emily found out that the emerald brooch had been auctioned and was now collected by a mysterious collector. After several twists and turns, she and Jack finally found the collector's residence. It was a quiet villa in the suburbs, surrounded by green trees and a pleasant environment. They knocked on the collector's door with trepidation. An old man with an elegant temperament opened the door with a puzzled look in his eyes. Emily and Jack carefully stated their purpose and expressed their willingness to borrow the brooch, with a hint of nervousness in their voices. After all, they knew that this request was abrupt and they fully expected to be rejected. However, when the old man heard their story, tears welled up in his eyes. He was silent for a moment, then slowly said, "I have collected this brooch for many years, and I have always felt that it carries an unknown story. Today, after listening to you, I understand its true destiny. I am not only willing to lend the brooch to you, but even want to give it to you, so that it can return to its original owner." Emily's eyes were moist and she immediately declined, "Sir, I am very grateful for your kindness. But for me, as long as I can break the curse and live a happy and peaceful life with Jack, nothing else matters. This brooch has been carefully collected by you, and when we are done with it, we will definitely return it intact." The collector was moved by Emily's sincerity, smiled and nodded and handed the brooch to Emily. Chapter 9. Love and Liberation. The two took the token they had obtained with great difficulty and followed the guidance of the ancient book to embark on the journey to the place where the curse was lifted. They passed through the dense and deep forest, with branches and leaves intertwined above their heads, and the occasional sunlight cast mottled light and shadows. The ground under their feet was soft and exuded the fragrance of soil. After walking for an unknown period of time, a steep mountain appeared in front of them, and the mysterious cave mentioned in the ancient book was on the top of the mountain. They climbed up with their hands and feet, The rocks were rough and scratched their palms, but the two did not retreat at all. Finally, they stood at the entrance of the cave. When they stepped into the cave, a damp breath hit them in the face, and the surroundings were filled with a quiet and mysterious atmosphere. There were dots of fluorescent light on the wall, as if telling an ancient story. They walked to the center of the cave, stood face to face, and held each other's hands tightly. Jack's slightly trembling hands revealed his inner tension, but the look he gave Emily was as firm as a rock. "Dear," his voice was low and gentle, as if he was afraid of disturbing the mysterious power in the cave. "No matter what happens next, I will be by your side. From the first time I saw you, I knew that you would be my lifelong patriot." As he spoke, he gently raised his hand and gently brushed away the sweat-soaked hair on Emily's forehead. Emily looked back at him firmly, with tears in her eyes, which was touching, and also her expectation for the future. "Jack, we will definitely succeed," she said with a slight sob. "I believe our love can overcome everything. With you along the way, I have never been afraid." As she spoke, she gently stroked the back of Jack's hand with her fingers, as if drawing strength. As the ceremony began, Emily slowly raised the emerald brooch, her arm trembling slightly, but she tried to keep it steady. Jack held the golden seal, and their eyes were fixed on the token in each other's hands. In an instant, strange light emanated from the two tokens. The green light of the emerald brooch and the bright golden light of the gold seal intertwined and entangled with each other. The light became stronger and stronger, illuminating the entire cave. In the light, they seemed to see all kinds of scenes from their previous lives. The sadness, pain, and helplessness gradually dissipated in this light. "Look, Jack," Emily's voice was full of amazement. "Our love is dispelling all this haze." She turned to look at Jack, her eyes full of hope. Jack held Emily's hand tightly and nodded vigorously. "Yes, dear, we did it." His voice was full of determination and pride. The light became more and more dazzling, and the strong light almost made it impossible to open your eyes. Suddenly, a slight click sounded, as if some restraint was broken. Then the light quickly converged and everything returned to calm. They felt that the shadow of the oppressive curse that had shrouded them for many years had dissipated. The two smiled at each other, their eyes full of happiness and relief. Jack hugged Emily in his arms and held her tightly, as if he wanted to integrate her into his life. Emily leaned in Jack's arms, tears welling up in her eyes. These were tears of happiness and relief after suffering. After the curse was lifted, Emily and Jack returned to the city. Jack quit his busy and high-pressure job and opened a warm bookstore with Emily. The bookstore is not big, but it is full of various books. The sun shines on the bookshelves through the window, creating a warm atmosphere. Every day they manage the bookstore together, recommend books to customers, and sit in the corner with a cup of coffee in their hands in their spare time, immersed in the world of books. Lily and Emily's relationship became closer and closer. She often came to the bookstore to help, and the three of them shared the little fun things in life together. Emily occasionally told Lily the story of her previous life, and Lily was fascinated and amazed. On a sunny day, Jack carefully planned and arranged a romantic proposal ceremony in the backyard of the bookstore. Surrounded by flowers and flickering candlelight, Jack knelt on one knee and said to Emily affectionately, "Emily, we went through hardships in the previous life, and I don't want to miss you again in this life. Will you marry me and let me protect you for the rest of my life?" Emily's eyes were full of tears of emotion. She nodded vigorously and said softly, "I do." After marriage, Emily and Jack started a plain but happy life journey. Emily went through 18 long searches and reincarnations, wandering in countless hopes and disappointments. In this life, she finally got what she wanted and entered the marriage hall with her beloved Jack. Now she is no longer obsessed with whether Jack will awaken the memory of the previous life. Looking back on the past, those regretful experiences that she and Jack loved each other in the previous life but could not stay together and could not get married to the end made her cherish the present very much. At this moment she deeply felt that as long as she could be happily with Jack in this life, it would be the most precious gift given to her by God. Every year they would carefully plan and take time to embark on a journey of travel. Their footprints are like lively notes, jumping on the maps of all parts of the world. Under the ancient and mysterious Egyptian pyramids, they stood side by side, feeling the weight of history and the vicissitudes of time, and captured the shock and joy in each other's eyes with the sound of camera shutters. Strolling on the romantic streets of Paris, The breeze on the Seine River gently brushed their hair. Emily leaned on Jack's shoulder, admiring the beautiful scenery along the coast, leaving laughter all the way. In the vast Australian Great Barrier Reef, they went diving. Hand in hand, surrounded by colorful corals and lively fish, exploring the mysterious underwater world together. And this wonderful experience became the eternal beauty in their hearts. In the morning, the first ray of sunlight was like a golden veil, gently falling on the head of the bed. At this time, Jack would always wake up Emily from her sleep with endless tenderness. His voice was low and magnetic. "Dear, a new day has begun." Emily slowly opened her eyes, and what she saw was Jack's loving smile. She reached out and held Jack's hand, and the two smiled at each other, welcoming the arrival of a new day together. They were busy in the kitchen together, preparing breakfast together, and occasionally laughed at each other because of a small joke, and the warm atmosphere filled the whole room. At night, the watery moonlight poured down on the earth, like a veil covering everything in the world. Emily and Jack would hold hands and take a leisurely walk in the moonlight. They walked along the quiet street, and the leaves beside them rustled in the breeze as if singing for their love. Along the way they shared the joys and sorrows of the day. Emily would excitedly tell about the interesting customers she met in the bookstore, or a good book that was newly put on the shelf. Jack would confide his insights at work, or the small challenges he encountered. They listened carefully to each other's words, nodding and responding attentively, and the two hearts became closer in the communication. Their love story, like the bright stars, was passed on by word of mouth among relatives and friends, and became a legend in the eyes of everyone. Whenever they talked about this love that spanned time and space, whether others believed it or not, their eyes were full of amazement and emotion. Their experience inspired everyone around them, making everyone firmly believe that the power of true love is enough to overcome the obstacles of time and space and overcome all difficulties and hardships. As long as there is love in the heart, the dawn of happiness can be ushered in.